Welcome to the video from initialized.com. This is a new tutorial for the Korg Wavestate. This works Wavestate Native, SE, all the different versions of Wavestate, and this is on wave sequencing. This is something that someone asked me on a comment on one of the videos, in fact, on the live stream that we were doing. And the question was, can you explain a bit more how wave sequencing works on the Korg Wavestate? I've kind of explained it, I think, on previous videos using mod sequencing. So what you heard at the beginning of the video was something like this, which is a wave sequence, or something like this. You can hear those transitions on there. So I thought what I'd do is I'll explain about them, about wave sequencing, and give you some examples of what you can do with it. So wave sequencing on the Wavestate is wave sequencing 2.0. Wave sequencing comes from the Korg Wavestation 1990 synth, which is one of my favorite digital synths. And it was capable of creating really evolving, rich pad sounds, as well as the sort of sequence sounds that you can hear here, which I'm emulating here on the Wavestate. So you could create these really rich sounds, and on the Wavestation, the 1990 synth, you could create those and you could edit those yourself. It's complicated to program directly on the actual synth itself. The emulator is pretty good, actually, if you're from the Korg collection, and I've used that. And I've recreated many of those Wavestation sounds. Here you can see my Wavestation collection, which you can get from initialized.com, where I've recreated many of the factory presets. But wave sequencing, what it does, it's a way for one sample to evolve to the next sample. So you could have it a nice smooth transition from maybe a couple of vocal type sounds to drifting between them, or you could have this hard, distinct sound, maybe a percussive sound like a glockenspiel to a string sound, or you can use it to sequence, say, drums and create a drum machine type pattern as well. So it's really about creating evolving sounds. You've got control over the time, the pitch, the length of the sample, and you can control them. And so it takes that sort of evolution from wave tables, which were a single cycle of sound, to be a single sample of sound, and then you can morph between them. And the Wavestate is 4 motion sequences or wave sequences per pat performance. So you have 4 layers, so you can create some really interesting sounds on there. So I'm going to look at how we can create a couple of these type sounds. I'll use one for some sort of nice smooth transition. I'll use one to create a bit more jarring, and I'll look at how you can recreate wave station patches on here as well, and how you can use some clever tricks for things like velocity switching pianos or evolving sort of pad sounds. So I'm going to be doing this with a combination of the hardware and the software editor. It is easier to see on the software editor, but some things, especially like envelopes, I like having the hardware by me to do that. So we're going to start with an initialized program first. Okay, so we're in initialized program here. We've just got one layer, and you'll notice on this later we can have a single sample, so like a piano, or we can have a wave sequence. And this is where we're going to dive into wave sequencing now, and we'll have a go at making some different wave sequences up. Then you've got tons of modulation routing as well to make this even more interesting and sounds more interesting. So when we go into the wave sequencer here, you've got timing, the sample, the pitch, shape, the gate, and the step sequence. So the timing is a length of time for that sound. So let's give you an example here. So we've got a sine wave and then to a saw wave. We've got a 1 second timer. So after 1 second, we should go between those. And that's fairly straightforward. We can change those samples. We can change the pitch of those samples, and we can apply some shaping. So shaping can be used for multiple things, but maybe the way that we transition with pitches or something, instead of just going step, we can have it smooth, or we can have all these different shapes, which I'll show you. We've got the gate of that step, so how long it is going to be within that time. And we've got some extra sequencer values which we use for other things as well. I always think when you're creating these samples, the first thing or these sequences, the first thing I always think of is it going to be musically timed? So do we want it synchronized with the clock? If we don't, you leave it in timing mode. If you want it synchronized with the clock, you switch it to tempo mode. And that's kind of the first thing I usually think about. We'll look at a tempo one shortly, but what we'll do now is we'll just stick with some basic ones for now, using timings. So let's go for these bit different. I'm going to go for a vocal sound. Let's go for a vocal ooh. And then we'll switch to a vocal ah. And let's listen. So you hear that looping through there. So that is just using that 1 second timer on there. What we've got here is the start, and you can see it if I go on here. You can have a start point, an end point of a loop, and start and end loop points, and start and end points. So what you can have it always looping through, or you can say do it 3 times and then end. So that's why you've got these different options on here. I'll show you that with the sample bit. For now, I'm just going to get it to go to start with this 1 second one, and then it's going to do the 2.4 second of the second sample. So you can hear that. Now we've got some crossfade on there. So we've got crossfade of 0.8. So it's going to crossfade between them. If I drop that down, so that is 1 second and then 2.4 seconds of pop R. If I lengthen that, so if I break that, breaks it the same. So you can see how you can set the crossfade time. If I set crossfade time on this one as well, so we've got a smooth transition there. So now we're already getting into sort of a nice, especially if I take that attack down. Let's go to the amp envelope and take that attack down a bit. Straight away you've created sort of a nice evolving pad or vocal sound. But we could go a step further. We could add another sample in there, and let's do something slightly different, and we'll have some strings on the end of it. Now nothing will happen at the moment because we haven't included it in the loop. So let's put that on there. Now you notice here that we've only got 2 timing values and 3 samples, so it doesn't mean it just does the 2, but it does the 1 second, the 1 second, the 1.03, and then the 1 second. So no matter how many samples we get, it just alternates between these 2. So they're not tied together, locked together, they're independent. So that's an interesting effect, which means things can get quite organic sounding and not repetitive because they're not all locked in steps. It's not like a musical sequencer with it on each note has to be the next step and the next value. So these can be unrelated. They're just in different. They can be different times. So I want to show you these. What's the difference between the start and end, a loop start and end? So we're in loop mode at the moment. I'm going to move this loop start to there, and the loop end is there. So you can see what happens. It plays that one first because that's the start. That's what this bottom row is here. So that's the start point, that's the loop start point, and that's the loop and end point. So now I could add another one on here, like a bell maybe. And I'm going to put that as the end step, not the loop end step, the end step. So you never get to hear that bell because the loop constantly runs. But that's because I'm on infinite repeats. If I has a repeat of, say, once, go ooh, ah, string, bell. You see? So that's how the difference between the endpoints on there. So if you have infinite repeats, you'll never hear that bell. If you have anything less than infinite, eventually you will hear that bell. So that's how these start and endpoints are affected. So I'm just going to change it. So here you can see the values for these samples. So you've got some options to do the octave, the transposing, tuning of those as well. So I could choose, I could maybe have this fifth up or something like that. And then one that's really important, which we can make some really interesting stuff out of it, is probability. So that bell one, let's drop the probability down to 50%. There you go. It took a few cycles to go through, but you notice that last time it didn't play the bell. If I put the probability quite low, you might not hear the bell, but at some point you will. So it includes a kind of it's random, the probability factor. So it will, so you can use that for creating some extra bit like that, the bit of harmonic bell at the end, but not all the time. The other one we've got there on here as well is we'll have a look at when I've got some drums. I think this is a fixed pitch value, so I'll have a look at that shortly. Right, let's have a look at actual pitch lane now. We've got the start and end points, just like we have with the other ones. We've got shape, which I'll show you in a second. Note on advanced, which actually is on the other ones as well. So I better explain what that is. Note on advanced is a great feature. And I've used it quite a few times for various little tricks, but basically as you press a note, the sample lane changes. So you might use that so the samples don't change the time, they might just stay fixed. So let me show you what I mean. So here I've got this timing lane. Let's put it on 1 second. You see here I've got a step type, and this is currently on note. If I put it to gate, it means it's fixed as a gate. The other, incidentally, the other one is a rest, so it'll play a rest, so you'll get that gap without the note playing. I'll show you that when we get to some of the drum type ones. So I put it on gate, go to my sample, and I put note and advance. You see, as I play each note, it's playing the next sample. So it works quite a nice little technique. The bells probably sounds a bit out of place on that one. If I just bring that back to. So it's not actively switching the wave sequencing, but it is switching as you play the steps. So I'll just put that back to note for now. Okay, the next thing we can look at, we can do some pitching here. So let's have 4 steps. Now I'm going to put that bell back in. But when it gets to the 4th step, I want the bell to be a bit lower. That's it, an octave lower. And of course, I've got to put the probability back up so I can hear that. So now when it goes to that step, you hear it lowers it down that octave. Now it lowers it down. You can hear it lower it down. And what we could do is we could use the shape lane. And here's the shape. We've just got this currently one selected. So it's going to go from the pitch to the -12, then back to 0. So you can hear that it's going down because the triangle is saying go from the current value to the selected value and then back. So if we wanted to go the other way, we could go 24, say. Not very musical in this context, but quite an interesting effect. Now, while I was on pitch, I should mention as well, you can, and all these lanes actually, you can have a random order as well, so you can have it to step through the order randomly. Another neat thing on here you've got is that fit to scale, so you can actually fit the notes into a scale, so all the pitches are constrained to that key that you select. So if I select to C major, and so it's keeping that sequence or those set of notes in the key of C major in this case, or you could put it as minor. So it's a nice way of making it more musical when you're putting these extra pitch values in. You can also use the shape here to control the volume as well. The other one is gate. Let me show you what I mean by that. I'm just going to have 2 on there and make a very short gate. We'll have, let's go for two gates, 1 long and 1 short. So you still get that same time, but the gate, so the actual key press, is short on there. And then the final bit is just a value that you can use for a step sequencer, and you could use that for anything. So I'm just going to add a few in here. Again, these are not all tied together, so they're just going to go in sequential value. I'm going to put some lower values in there, maybe some higher values up here. So we've just got a value being selected on there. I'll put this gate back up. So what can we do with that value? Well, what we could do is take the filter cutoff and modify it by sequencing lane. So you can see it's stepping that frequency value. But what we could do is use the shape, and we can. So each step is it's performing that shape to get to that value. From the previous value to the next one, it does the triangle shape. So you can get some interesting effects of that. Notice as well that as I play polyphonically, each note has got its own synchronization, but we could sync them so that they all go together. So the next thing I wanted to show you on here is going to go into time mode. I'm going to turn this crossfade off on these, and so now it's in a musical time. You can see the divisions it breaks down, but I could add an extra step. I can have as many steps as I want, really. You can see there's a lot of steps you can add to it, and I have used these on quite a few of these on multiple patches, but you can change it. So I can have a long, so 2 short, 1 long. That makes a nice sequence. So you can create that kind of sequence on there. On the timing now, you see I've got crossfade. I can do off, I can do it by time, or I can do it by tempo. And you can also introduce some swing. So here I've just loaded it in a one that I made earlier. This one, I've put timings on there. And I've put a kick and a snare. And you can hear I'm getting a rhythmic process because I'm in timing mode. I've got the length set and I've just got the switch through these samples. So I can switch through any of these samples and change that different snare. So now what I'm going to do is show some real examples of pitch changes, sequencing, maybe a bit higher, some of the presets for some of my own sounds, and then we'll have a go at creating a couple as well. We'll have some evolving pad. We'll have a look at one that's got the sort of Wavestation type sequence. One way of doing it. Another way is to have a drum sample that's like that. So the first one I've got on here is one I recreated from the original Wavestate. So this is a pattern called Midnight Run. Here's a bass loop. So using the same method, just with I recreated this on there pattern by looking at the original Wavestation sequence on the plugin and copying that and recreating it on here. So what we've got here is a single 16 note with a very little crossfade on it, and then we're going through these multiple uke guitars, and then you can hear the pitch on them. And that's all we're doing on that one. It's very simple, but it's very effective and a really nice sequence. So let's start from scratch and we'll recreate something like that. So I've got a blank program here, to performance. I'm going to put it into tempo mode. We're just going to use we'll use the 8 one for now. And now we're going to choose some samples for it to go through. I'm going to turn the crossfade down as well, because I want it to be able to hear those steps. So I'm going to get through some, let's go for some like synth tones so we can have a bell, and then let's go to the different synth sound lead. Let me get sort of 4 or 5 of these. I'm actually going to get a couple of bells on there as well, so that sometimes it's playing the same note. So I'm going to stretch the loop down to be the full portion of it. And maybe a snare is not the best thing to let's pick something. Okay, so let's have some pitching in this now as well. So we'll start on the 0, and maybe we'll go an octave up. Let's go down 3, up 5, up 12, down 3. Let's have a listen. Okay, that's our basic. It sounds a bit dry at the moment. But if we start to build up on that, I put a bit of chorus and effects and have some delay on there. That's okay. And so that's okay. Now, we don't have to have this in the same order. We could go for a random order. or we could go forwards, backwards, which is often quite effective. Okay, now in terms of envelope, I've got just, if I go on the amp envelope, I've just got the open envelope now, but we could use, this is where we can start to use some more interesting stuff on here. I'm going to have a little short envelope. Now, of course, we don't get to hear the rest of the sequence when we do that. If we go to envelopes, we can actually trigger it by the step pulse. So that envelope gets re-triggered by the step pulse. Okay, so that's doing what I wanted to do. Now, what we could do, we could even alter that release there. So let's bring these values down, and then a slightly higher release, and then down, and then a higher release. So I can modify that by the sequence value. So you see, to get some interesting effects on there. Now the other thing we could do is, we've got all using the same note length at the same time, but of course we could change it so we get a couple of 16s, then an 8, and then maybe a 32. It sounds very wonky now. I think we probably need a quarter just to finish that off. And then we can have a nice another sequence down. I'm going to turn that off for now. Let's go for something a bit more flowing. Let's get a nice let's go for vocals. I always like these kind of vocals. So we'll get the R sound, and we'll get it to slowly transition to, say, ooh sound. So we can set quite a long time on that one. And we'll have cry. Okay, so on the envelope for this one, I will fade that down and put us a bit of release on there. I think I'm going to change that vocal for a different sample. Let's go there. So a nice fade out on that one. Okay, so we'll put them two together. It sounds crazy then when you start playing it at that high level. It just, if I play it one, look, it sounds fine. It sounds a bit crazy, that. So what is probably the best thing to do is just to put a bit of a split. So I just want that first layer on the lower notes. So now we should have now, one thing you could do, as I mentioned, you could sync it so when you play it across the keyboard, it keeps it sync, but I think we want them at sync on that one. So that's a nice simple effect. Now, if we wanted to do something a bit with rhythms, then I'll just change that into tempo mode. I'll set the crossfade. So I'll set the crossfade down to 0. I'm going to go through some percussion. So maybe I go for a kick. And then I go for a hi-hat. And then, in fact, let's just leave that for them for now. So you can hear that. So we've got that looping on there. So what I could do on there is the next one, have a snare. And then another hi, like that. Now let's put a bit of flange on and let's see what that sounds like together. Of course, what I need to do is just bring that drum kit so it's only on the lower section as well. And there we go. So we've got those 3 layers, and we can finish it off with a 4th layer with another kind of sequence in there, evolving or drum sounds or something else. So let's save that one. So I'll switch back to an initial program. I'm going to show another little neat trick, is you can switch samples based on velocity. So I'm going to choose some just different samples so that you can hear the effect, and then I'll change it to something a bit more subtle afterwards. So let's choose 3. There we go. So we've got 3 samples. So currently, that's all we can hear. And if I do that, we'll hit the end of the drum. Okay, change that to a gate. So all we can hear is the slap there. If I go here and go to the start, you see you can modify it. So I'm going to modify it by exponential velocity. Now we can tweak this to see. So right, so with that set at 2, low gives me the slap. Oh, so with that set at 2, if I do it very gently, you can hear the slap. If I a bit harder, you can hear the steel guitar. Full velocity does the snare sound. So a bit unusual. Yeah, a bit weird when you do it like that way. But what, of course, you can do is go to keys, and you've got these, say, electric pianos. So I can go soft, medium, and hard. So you see, going soft, a bit harder still. So I've got velocity switching, really simple way of doing it on there. So that's a really simple technique. It works for all things. So acoustic pianos, you could have it on string sounds or whatever to build that sort of dynamicism into it. Another use of the this kind of technique, or another use of wave sequencing completely different, is I can do a Berlin School ratchet type sequence. I've done full videos of this one, but I can just show you what I mean. So this one is using those 3 sawtooths, but then what I've done is I've used the shape laying here on the step sequence value. So I'm using, so they go to the step sequence, we're using shape. And then on the envelopes, I'm triggering them by the step sequence value. Now, if I wasn't using the shape, you won't get the double triggers. So I'll just switch on this one layer. And if I turn off on the step, if I turn off the shape, the gate, this envelope, this amp envelope is being triggered by this level. It's always staying at 100, so it never gets to trigger it. You get the initial trigger and then it's staying at level, so it never drops down to re-trigger it. If I drop one of them down here, we should hear it trigger there and there. So now we're only hearing it there because it's high, low, trigger, low, trigger. But because I said use the shape, it now picks up that shape. So it goes high to low, high, low, high, high to low, and that is causing that value to be enough to trigger the envelope. So there's even a triple one there with probability of 49, so it's not always doing it, but it will do it fairly often. So that's another way of using that sequencer, but we're not actually doing wave sequencing in this. In fact, we've only actually got one sample on there, that square wave. So those are some of the techniques you can use with wave sequencing. I've really not covered all of it. If there's a particular part that you'd like me to delve into a bit deeper, then let me know. For example, if you really want to know about this ratcheting sequencing, check out my other video on that, because that really, I go into details and show exactly how to recreate that. So check that out. But if there's other bits that I've sort of maybe glossed over or didn't talk enough in detail for you, let me know. I'll have a go at recreating that. It's a very powerful and interesting tool, wave sequencing. Allows you to recreate those sort of classic wave sequences from the Wavestation, the original one, but also just check out some of the presets and you'll hear some amazing uses of these wave sequencing. To hit. You can hear those evolving sounds. Just check out some of the presets. They're absolutely brilliant. There's some really creative uses of it anyway. They're a good learning point. So thanks for watching this video. Please like and subscribe if you like it. Maybe it's gone too long as usual. I'll see you on the next video.